high-pitched hum became a whooshing sound that sucked all other sounds up and away. The shuttle driver slammed the brakes. Passengers shrieked, and a few lost their balance, falling into seated laps in confusion. Emma froze, hands pressed against the hot window glass, the screams around her muffled by the earplugs. Satellite Man burst out, "Herregud, did you see that? What the hell was that?" His accent was Swedish. As eyesight and hearing slowly returned, everything looked washed out, overexposed. The blinding light was gone, along with the car and Brandon. All that remained in their place was a hole in liquefied tar, strewn with chunks of molten metal and a sprinkling of ash. This was not the plan. None of the team was supposed to die. The stunned driver came to life. Grabbing the microphone, he yelled over the passengers' babble, "What do you want me to do? Go, go, go!" was the unanimous reply. If the center was under attack, no one wanted to stick around. He hit the gas pedal, sending more standers off balance. Terrified now, they clutched at each other. A few cried. Emma stared fixedly at the South Hall doors, willing Donovan to come out. Moments later, he emerged. His casual but purposeful saunter told her that he hadn't seen Brandon wiped off the earth. Intent on his goal, he paid no attention to the gathering witnesses. Trapped on the bus, with a regulator glued into her mouth, Emma couldn't scream a warning to him. The bus rapidly pulled away. She twisted in her seat and tried to wave at him, but it was impossible for him to see her. Anxiously, she glanced around at the rest of the passengers. The din had quieted. Several people looked ill. 2 men, an Indian at the back and a German at the front, began to shake uncontrollably. A new, higher-pitched babble broke out. An Israeli-accented voice screamed from beside an Indian, "Stop the bus! He is ill!" It took only seconds for other passengers to look around and realize many were sick. Another accented voice shouted, "Out! Everybody out!" prompting more panicked entreaties to the driver. The bus driver flicked terrified glances in his rearview mirror and quickly turned into the driveway of the Marriott. Satellite Man wheezed, left hand clutching his chest, his shaky right fumbling madly for an asthma inhaler in his front trouser pocket. The moment the shuttle stopped and the doors flew open, the stampede began. No one was more desperate to escape than Emma. Unable to rise, Satellite Man gasped like a landed fish and clutched her arm. She tore his clammy, grasping hands off her as she crawled over his lap to plunge into the mass of passengers in the aisle. She forced her way through the twisted, convulsing bodies to the bus's front steps. Those who realized she was unaffected applauded her to carry them to safety, but she slapped them off fiercely, helping no one. Bursting out of the open door, she half stumbled, half ran down the steps and onto the pavement. Fixated on reaching her white Ford Escort, she shut out the sights and sounds of her dying busmates. The few who made it out of the bus and collapsed set off their smart badges' reoriented proximity sensors. In virtual conversation, the same dispassionate female compu voice kept repeating on dozens of badges, "Hi Gunther, I'm Ming Mei. Hi Jorge, I'm Francois. Let me tell you about writing the Shooting With, starring as your own." They would be the last words the badge wearers would ever hear. Feverishly fishing out keys from her pocket, Emma paused. Could Brandon have triggered something? If she unlocked the door, would she die too? The sirens were getting louder, and her options fewer. Her trainers were adamant, don't deviate from the plan. Slowly, she slipped the key into the lock. It turned easily. The door opened. Nothing happened. Maybe it was the ignition. She got behind the wheel, fastened her seatbelt, and gently put the key in the ignition. The car turned over and the engine hummed. No white light came to extinguish her existence. She breathed a constrained sigh of relief through her mouthpiece, then carefully backed out of the space, following the arrows to a far exit, turning right onto Paradise Road, and immediately crossing over 2 lanes to make a left onto East Desert Inn Road, tires squealing below the suspended corridor created by the hulking convention center above her. The sirens were close. The authorities would close the largest arteries first, so Emma avoided Interstate 15, the usual route through Las Vegas, to escape onto surface streets and back roads. The plan was to meet up 150 miles away. Only she and Donovan would make it now. Within 10 blocks, traffic slowed. As the overpass for the 515, 95, 93 loomed before her, she saw it. A smoking hole in the asphalt at a stoplight, blocking a lane. People surrounded it, staring into its wet, inky blackness. Emma began to cry. Traffic freed up after the overpass. Word of what happened had not yet reached the local drivers. She careened right, turning the corner of the first street she saw, Backstage Boulevard, and made a quick left on Flory Avenue. She was in a residential neighborhood, full of one-story 1960s ranch-style homes. She parked in front of a gray house with white trim, peeling large flakes from the relentless Las Vegas sun, and left the keys in the ignition, in case removing the keys might trigger an explosion. She bolted down the street, gasping for air. There wasn't enough. It could have been her weeping, or maybe her air filters had failed and she too was infected, but she couldn't stop. Through the fogged lenses of her goggles, she searched for an escape route. In one direction, there was a dead end into railroad tracks. She dashed right into a cul-de-sac. Suddenly, Emma felt as if her head might explode. Her ears rang and she experienced the sensation of her body being peeled inside out. After the burst of blinding white light faded away, the center of the cul-de-sac had an oozing, tarry hole in it. Emma was gone. It would be over 6 hours before a cruiser from the Las Vegas Police Department came to examine the hole after receiving a housewife's hysterical 911 call. Part 1. Chapter 1. It hadn't sunk in yet. Peter Bernhardt caught sight of his reflection in the glass of a framed photograph. A scarecrow sagged over the Biogeneers conference room table, raking fingers through unbrushed, shoulder-length brown hair, staring back with blue, bloodshot eyes, chalky, pale skin, taut with stress. Was Was that him? Or was a ghost floating in front of the photo of California's governor shaking hands with a different Peter Bernhardt? 6 foot, broad-shouldered, crooked nose, cleft chin paired with a single cheek dimple in a smile that was a little too eager to please, dressed in his daily uniform of a black t-shirt and jacket, blue jeans, and black running shoes. Other specters bounced off framed articles about Bernhardt and Biogineers and Wired. Is Peter Bernhardt going to change neuromedicine forever? The Economist. Biogineers. The super small will soon be super big. The Wall Street Journal. Conquistador Capital explores brave new world of nanomedicine with Biogineers. And the New York Times. While my guitar gently reaps. About how he came up with a nanorobotic structure while playing Mother's Little Helper by the Rolling Stones on a Gibson Firebird, and the idea for Biogineers while playing Bad Brain by the Ramones on a Fender Stratocaster. He had thought these mementos represented a level of success that could never be taken away. Would he burn them now? Peter was in shock, obsessing about bullshit, having just been axed from the nanobiotech firm he created. Because of Biogineers, he was being blamed for the biggest mass murder in history, and he didn't even know why. Bruce Lobo stared unblinkingly across the table, pale gray eyes devoid of emotion. Short, muscular, he looked like any number of wealthy Latino businessmen in Silicon Valley. But he wasn't just anybody. Lobo was the most powerful man in the biotech business. For 2 days, he had been Peter's boss. Now, he was Peter's enemy. Because the government believes nanorobots were used to perpetrate the attacks, said Bruce. You and Biogineers are under suspicion. To protect ourselves, Lobo Industries' board of directors has decided to terminate your contract with cause for gross negligence or willful misconduct or terrorism or any other damn thing we can prove. Biogineers and Lobo Industries will distance themselves from you personally, using any means necessary. Amanda will tender her resignation immediately by signing this resignation letter written on her behalf. The letter lay in the middle of the table. Bruce rocked back in the seat, silent, his stare penetrating Peter's skull like a bone drill bit. No amount of homework could have prepared Peter for this morning. Lobo was a challenging business colleague with a ruthless and monopolistic reputation, but Peter had thought that 2 poor but smart Catholic boys who had made good in the same industry might have a lot in common and be able to bond. They had both used intelligence and ambition to climb to the top of the biotech field, a field that daily changed how humanity dealt with illness. Peter's technology was on the brink of making Alzheimer's obsolete, depression a thing of the past, brain diseases something that only happened to those who didn't receive treatment. People would live longer and healthier lives than ever before. He'd thought he was creating happiness for millions, if not billions of people. By teaming with Lobo, Peter had hoped to synergistically work with other Lobo enterprises to create something bigger than the sum of their parts. He had thought the bion would be the best thing for everyone, but apparently, everything he knew about Lobo was wrong. Just 2 days ago was no ordinary workday. A welcome to the evil empire party was in full swing as Biogineers' team celebrated their big payday. By 10 a.m., Dom and Raging Bulls flowed and everyone was having a great time. Amanda even pulled Peter into a storeroom for a congratulatory drunken makeout session, her long limbs wrapped around him. Even after 11 years, Peter marveled how this woman could be his wife. He kissed her impossibly high cheekbones that slashed across copper-colored skin. Glossy black lashes and thick eyebrows framed almond-shaped eyes. The right, blue-green. The left, brown. Her long, straight black hair fell over her face, stroking his cheek, and she absent-mindedly pushed it back up behind her ear, where gravity would prevail again in a minute. He often fantasized she was descended from a famous Indian chief, his own Pocahontas. Her family history included a sizable chunk of Cherokee, so it was possible. The only thing that stopped them from having sex right there was a few equally drunk co-workers who opened the door screaming, "Surprise!" moments before they were in flagrante delicto. Everyone thought it was hilariously funny, at the time. Just 2 days ago, Peter was glad-handing employees, telling them this was the beginning of great things. He hunted down the chief engineer, Chang Ang, surrounded by his exuberant team down in the manufacturing lab. Chang quietly nursed a beer as the jokes flew around him. Everything about Chang was condensed to its essence, from his slim physique to his perfectly fit chinos and Oxford shirt that allowed for no more fabric than was absolutely necessary, to his hair buzzed weekly at a number 2. Biogineers would never have achieved half its success without Chang's extraordinary engineering and problem-solving skills. Peter pulled him aside. "You know this is all because of you, and it's just the beginning." Chang's head bowed. "It wasn't me. It was our team. They allowed me to do all the hard work." Peter slapped him on the back. "Stop being so Chinese. You're not part of the Microsoft of biotech. You have unbelievable benefit and stock packages. Just say thank you." Chang shyly stared down the barrel of an empty beer bottle. "Thank you." Just 2 days ago, they had been on top of the world. Then the bad news arrived from Las Vegas. By 12:04 p.m., reports spread to Biogineers. Employees' goes demanded attention like a gaggle of screaming toddlers, since every modern communications device and self-aware brain paired with an opposable thumb was marshaled to spread the news. Employees ran for cubicles looking at monitors. Someone in the bullpen screamed, "Turn on the big screen!" And the 3D 156-inch was fired up. Every media feed switched to the Las Vegas Convention Center halls, all unfiltered, all live, in all its empathetic horror. No censoring the gruesome or graphic by fearful news producers. Even though September 11 had been more spectacular with its fires, collapsing buildings, and ash-covered survivors, this was far more horrifying. The intimacy of their deaths destroyed denial, with only the screen preventing you from sharing their last breath. On the screen, a tanned, buff marketing exec sat on the ground, confounded by his inability to stand because his legs flopped like dying fish beneath him. A leprechaun-like ISP exec grabbed onto his Amazon-esque display designer and, unable to unclench his fingers from her arms, shook them both with convulsions so violent the designer screamed in panic. A fat, jowly DJ staggered like a cartoon drunk on a bender. He grabbed the flimsy booth of porn provider Hot Pockets to buoy him up, but toppled through the cheap homemade display of foam core and flat screens. Images of moaning, naked men and women crashed down with him in a tangled orgy of men and machines. St. Vitus's dance brought St. Anthony's fire. Hundreds of digital camera screen systems aimed down aisles to grab the egocentric attention of strolling attendees, instead captured images of helplessness. As the first victims fell, spokesmodels grabbed the cameras and began filming, each their own Robert Capa, if only for minutes. The big screens, 3D screens, laptops, and Go's revealed different parts of the action. It was the biggest multi-camera shoot in human history, recording the largest unscripted drama of all time, and the horror was multiplied by video's virtual reality. Footage was both evidence and media clips, delivered electronically to our stunned world. Although hysteria gripped the crowd, it would not be for long. Most exposed to the high-tech plague were too busy dying. Media casters like Apple, Univision, and Narcissity went live to their portals. The webmasters and editors knew extraordinary footage when they saw it, and shared the moment in a way every news department dreams of. Breaking news, which came of age chasing white Broncos and watching Twin Towers fall, reached its apotheosis. Peter shivered before the big screen, holding Amanda protectively. She bit her fingernail. "My God," she whispered, "the whole world is watching." Many of Biogeneer's employees wept, alone or huddled together. Several rocked, arms wrapped around their ribs. Others froze in silence, unable to comprehend the enormity of the vision. But none could tear themselves away. On the NBC feed, North Hall exit doors were hidden by a cresting tsunami of bodies. As people tried to escape and failed, they piled high, with a swell diminishing back down the aisle toward the cameras. Beyond the horror, it indicated a repeated behavior of the dying, a panicked run, loss of control of limbs, convulsions, inability to breathe, sudden death. Peter had the sickest thought of all. What if it was a nano-agent, like Biogeneer's nanoviruses or nanobots? Refusing to make assumptions, he asked loud enough for the room to hear, "What could have killed those people in that way based on what we can see right now?" A tiny Korean personal assistant named Jay choked back a sob and asked, "A biological weapon? Of what sort? Bacteria?" She continued. "They died too fast." "Virus?" yelled out a nano-engineer. "If it's a classical virus, same problem. Not enough time to replicate," said Peter. "Chemical?" said Amanda's right hand, Ernesto. "But what kind?" asked Amanda. "Each person goes haywire in a similar yet personal way, then dies. And there's no sign of the body's rejection of the agent," Peter added. "Like blood from the eyes, nose, lungs, even vomit. They just shudder, like a machine, then stop." "Attacked the brain directly?" said the nano-engineer. Everyone stopped talking. No one wished to voice the next logical step. It took nanoparticles to pass the blood-brain barrier that fast. Chang stood next to Peter. His look of appalled recognition, paired with something else, an irrational sense of responsibility, perhaps, reflected Peter's feelings. Maybe their technology, created to help mankind, was responsible for this. Jesse Steinberg, a giant, shambling, shaggy bear of a code jockey, spoke their thoughts aloud in his basso profundo to get everyone's attention. "What about bots?" Someone shouted, "Shut the fuck up, asshole!" Another sobbed loudly. Amanda's fingernails dug a hole in Peter's arm. If Jesse could come up with that assumption so quickly. Peter's stomach did a flip-flop and settled somewhere near his larynx. He couldn't watch anymore. "Everyone," he shouted, "we're closing the offices for the rest of the week. If any of you have friends or family involved, Amanda and I give you our deepest sympathies, and please, let us know what we can do to help." Chang turned to go, and Peter grabbed his arm. "Get your team," said Peter. "We need to find out who did this, and how to stop another one like it." Chang nodded. In the days that followed, the media force-fed the images until viewers vomited up terror with chunks of guilt and revenge. News anchors wept on cue behind their desks as they rewatched their dying friends and colleagues. The images were society's collective consciousness made digital, memories preserved forever, bite by bite. So not only could we never forget, but we would be reminded when we least expected it, like the visceral knee-jerk PTSD horror that gripped New Yorkers when they unexpectedly saw an image of the Twin Towers. The media flashed them with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Only after death might there be peace, because the memories lodged in their brains would be gone, finally and forever. Or would they? No one yet grasped that everyone was a victim of the newly dubbed 1026. Some died, some didn't, some wished they did. Peter Bernhardt would soon discover which type of victim he was. "So now what?" Peter asked. Lobo sighed. "Only 3 companies in the world have technology like this, and Biogeneers is the only U.S. manufacturer. The FBI assumes the nanobots came from here. You are a suspect. Is that simple enough for you?" He rocked back in his chair. "As of now, you and Amanda will leave immediately and be barred from entering any Lobo facility, unless requested to do so by either me or the federal government. You may not take anything with you. You may not delete or destroy anything. The authorities have demanded everything be left as potential evidence. Bioengineers will comply with all government requests and cooperate to the fullest extent possible, including congressional, DHS, and DOJ's criminal investigations. If you resist, Bioengineers will be obligated to remove you by force. Peter flushed in rage and tried to still his shaking hands. Lobo's eyebrow cocked in amazement. I'm offering a dignified exit. What more do you want? Peter pounded the tabletop. This is my company! No, it's my company. And you sold me a worthless, murderous piece of shit. And I'm going to make sure you rot in jail, pal. We didn't kill anyone. How could you think that? Why isn't anyone accusing the Koreans or Singapore? Why aren't we finding out who did this? Lobo rose, a smirk spreading across his lips. Are you that stupid? The whole world is investigating this. He headed for the door with his trademark limp, where 2 security guards in black suits and ties loomed. The meeting was over. Peter leapt from his chair and grabbed his arm. Bruce, this is insanity. We should be working together to vindicate ourselves. Why are we even fighting? Peter stood a head taller and had 40 pounds on Bruce. The guards instantly spun, ready to fight. But Lobo raised his free hand to heal them, and glared at Peter's white-knuckled grip on his French-cuffed shirt with disdain. Because it doesn't matter who did it. There's always a fall guy. And since it's never me or Lobo Industries, it might as well be you. Peter hadn't hit anyone in 20 years. The last time his teenaged opponent broke his nose, but Peter had done much worse to him. His straight punch to Lobo's head was deflected as the smaller man grabbed Peter's arm and twisted it, along with Peter, to the ground, following with a powerful uppercut. Peter dropped. Lobo kicked his face, and blood spewed from Peter's nose. As a parting gesture, a boot to the ribs, complete with audible crunch, was executed with the same economy and practiced ease as the rest of Lobo's dealings. Wrong league, fuckwit. Lobo limped out the conference room doors, security murmuring in their mouthpieces in his wake. Down the hall, he yelled over his shoulder, "Hey, Catolico, you got 15 minutes. I'd start praying to the Holy Virgin if I were you." Chapter 2. Peter staggered to his office and grabbed handfuls of tissues to stem the nosebleed. Then he grabbed a 1972 Gibson Les Paul from the row of vintage and contemporary guitars that rimmed the room. It was the first guitar Amanda bought him when they were still Stanford undergraduates. Many guitars followed, but this one had special meaning. It was when they realized they loved each other, and there would never be anyone else. He refused to leave it behind, and wanted her to remember its meaning while he told her what happened. There were no days off for Amanda. Peter found her where he had left her, in her office fielding query after query. As Bioengineers Vice President of Public Relations, she supervised media information 24/7 for months before the Lobo acquisition. The formal announcement of the closed deal had been disseminated to all major news outlets to break 2 days before, but their news was eclipsed by a much more important story. Instead of handling the usual post-merger request for press releases, photo ops, and expert quotes in business and trade journals, she waded through voicemails from national press asking for interviews with Peter to discuss the terrorist attack. 2 days ago, she had been as devastated as anyone about 1026 and cried in his arms for hours. But the next morning, she was hard at work saving the company from death by public opinion. Only, it wasn't their company anymore. So I'll need the public statement from our counsel to you when? Arnold! God damn it! Arnold! Shit! She slammed down the receiver as Peter reached her door. And where's the internet? She tapped her keyboard. What's going on? She heard Peter, but didn't look up. Of all days, my email's frozen, phone's on the fritz. We have to go, now. She saw his blood-smeared face and t-shirt, then the guitar. What happened? He kissed her cheek, careful not to get blood on her. I can't leave, she said. Arnold was setting up a media step list with hand-picked outlets. There is no company left to save, Mandy. At least not for us. Please, you have to come with me. He tugged at her hand, and she rose, uncomprehending, to follow him. But you're bleeding. I forgot this wasn't the schoolyard. You need x-rays, she said. I know. He led her into the elevator. Lobo says I'm under suspicion for 1026, and we're out. Executive summary. Forced resignations, no severance, no stock, a criminal investigation from Lobo and the shareholders and the feds. Probably millions in debt for legal fees. Amanda was speechless for the first time in her life, and shaking. As they exited the elevator in the main lobby, their longtime security guard, Francis Bullock, moved from behind his desk to stand directly in their path, but started at Peter's condition. I'm sorry, Mr. Bernhardt, but you... He wasn't alone. 2 more black-suited Lobo security men stood at the exit doors, looking as menacing as the first pair. Known to all as St. Francis of Sand Hill Road, the guard was about 70 and white-haired, but still spry and twinkle-eyed. That's no problem, mumbled Peter. His face was swelling. I gotta check you out, Mr. Bernhardt. Pat you down. Make sure you take nothing out of the building. And you can't take that either. He pointed at the Gibson slung around Peter's back. Francis, it's just a guitar. I know that, Mr. Bernhardt, but I gotta do it. Even though we both know this is dumber than a picnic in a hurricane. You know me losing my job over something stupid be wrong, too. One of the gorillas by the doors stepped forward. We'll handle this. St. Francis spun on them. No, you wait. I know my job. He turned back, eyes fierce. Better me than them, he whispered. Amanda turned away, trying not to get emotional. She chewed her thumbnail as Peter pulled the Gibson strap over his head and handed the guitar to Francis. Please, put it back in my office, and be careful with it. It's a special one. Yes, sir. You know I will. St. Francis laid the guitar against his desk so softly that it made no sound. He then proceeded to pat Peter down. Peter had only a billfold in his pocket and handed it to Francis, who made a show of looking through it carefully. Then he checked the contents of Amanda's purse. When he was done, a guard said, "Pat her down, too." "I know it," snapped St. Francis. "I'm old, and I'm getting there." Amanda stood with her arms in a T as he patted her as lightly as a butterfly. His downcast eyes were damp, and he began to recite quietly, "I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will solve my riddle to the music of the lyre." She stared at the ceiling, trying to ignore the guard's leers. Peter wanted to kill them. Francis continued, "Why should I fear in times of trouble, when the iniquity of my persecutors surrounds me, men who trust in their wealth and boast of the abundance of their riches?" One of the guards smirked. "You missed her back pockets. Inside." Francis avoided Amanda's infuriated eyes. He carefully pulled back the tight fabric of her jeans pocket and pretended to look inside. "Truly no man can ransom himself or give to God the price of his life. For the ransom of his life is costly and can never suffice, that he should continue to live on forever and never see the pit." Finished, he whispered with deep embarrassment, "You're clean." "We know," Peter whispered back. Chapter 3. Biogeneers was housed in the last building of the last anonymous industrial park before Highway 280. Peter pulled his Le Mans Blue 1968 Corvette Stingray out of Biogeneers' parking lot in a daze and onto empty Sand Hill Road. Rush hour usually inched, but the malls and buildings were mostly empty and the roads clear of traffic, like a zombie movie. The public feared the new plague. On mental autopilot, he followed El Camino Real north. No longer the royal road of the Spanish Empire, it was now the high-tech highway through the world's greatest technological empire of Silicon Valley. Peter had fancied himself a Spanish grandee in that brave new empire, until today. Today, the Inquisition began. Amanda tapped her Go, checking email and news. She avoided answering the phone, not knowing what to say. The CNN feed was grim. A hitherto unknown group called ATIMO, American Terrorists and American Military Occupation, was taking responsibility. They wanted an end to foreign occupation and opportunistic wars, and were willing to spill their own blood and that of their fellow Americans to do it. 3 young people were named as perpetrators, and their identities were confirmed by security footage and DNA analyzed from saliva left on their disposable coffee cups thrown in trash cans. "My God, children inspired by bad TV reruns," gasped Amanda. "No," sighed Peter. A-Team is a Special Forces nickname for their fighting units. Shit. The FBI said their deaths were a radical form of suicide bombing, designed for maximum shock, awe, and elimination of evidence. An investigation to find the creators of both attack and suicide technologies was ongoing, but there was evidence to suggest a Californian company had the capabilities to make this new plague. The government's failure to prevent the tragedy was blamed on insufficient security and intelligence funding, and law enforcement agencies were asking Congress for authorization to protect our nation with private security contractors unfettered by federal law enforcement regulations. Congress would agree to provide this and more in the months to come. They acquiesced without debate, because fear was a budget line item. CBS televised the martyrs' final videos, and Amanda watched, mesmerized, on her Go. "I don't understand," said Peter. "How did 3 undergrads get this tech? It's so specialized. And who knows how to attack with bots?" Amanda exited the video tab to read headlines aloud. "Senator Mankiewicz urges special panel to investigate nanotechnology industry." What industry? Everyone does nanotechnology. Like many scientists who worked on the nanoscale, Peter didn't think of himself as doing nanotechnology. That simply meant he made things on an atomic scale. He could manipulate atoms and molecules like Lego bricks, making structures so small, 1,000,000 nanotubes twisted together would be the width of a human hair. He was a bioengineer curing diseases by building tiny machines, only molecules big, as drug delivery or therapeutic structural systems. Others doing nanotechnology were chemists, building labs on a chip to diagnose diseases or identify pollutants, physicists making renewable fuel cells, biochemists making water filtration systems, or electrical engineers designing quantum semiconductors. Nanotechnology only applied to the scale of the efforts, a new arrow in their technological quiver, and not an objective in itself. Yet, nanotechnology captured the public's attention as a discrete borderline of technology, thanks to the media. It was a good soundbite and headline, the atom as the final frontier. But there were numerous final frontiers over the years. Space, thanks to JFK and Star Trek. The sea, thanks to Jacques Cousteau. Some said the brain was the final frontier. Now, the atom. In his opinion, there was no final frontier. If there was, humanity was screwed. Amanda continued, President Stevens condemns terrorists, swears to root out and bring ATIMO to justice. Her messages chimed. All I want to know is where the hell did those kids get the tech? And why does everyone assume it's me? His first calls would be to his Asian counterparts to see if they had any clues about the Korean or Singaporean companies. Carter called. Maybe he could help. He's your best friend. You call him. He's your best friend too, said Amanda quietly. We both know that's been in name only for a while. Amanda expelled an exasperated breath. Would you stop